So this video is more about a couple of ideas that I've had recently that I thought might be interesting to talk about on camera. I mean, the idea of vlogging has always been a bit odd to me, to film yourself saying something on a camera and expect other people to find it interesting. But I've been encouraged by people to engage in it for a variety of reasons, foremost of which, kind of on a low level, it's tapping into your ability to speak publicly, even though it's not directly publicly. And I think it works well for someone who is interested in doing things on camera in the future regardless. So it could be a useful thing to get into. Really, the topic for this video is the idea of interests and how difficult it can be to keep all these interests on a level. So the idea of keeping the spinning plates constantly spinning at all times. So if you neglect one interest, it tends to slip, and as a result it's harder to get back into. Making videos obviously is the most obvious one, considering that this is on a YouTube channel. I find that this is one of the harder interests to keep going on a regular basis, simply because it's such a time-consuming interest. You need to go out, you need to film something, you need to think about how it's going to fit together thematically, you need to find the music for it, which actually is kind of an enjoyable part of it. Finding the music for my videos generally isn't that difficult. Then you need to edit it all together, which is obviously the most time-consuming aspect of it and the least fluid part of it. I think it's quite a skill to get to the point where you find editing a fluid task to do, which is why I typically enjoy editing in concentrated bursts, where I'll sit down and edit an entire video at once, so as to prevent that kind of break in the flow of the editing. Other interests to keep up with are obviously things like fitness. Not everybody's as preoccupied by fitness as I am. It's certainly something that I think is a responsibility for a lot of people. Self-imposed, obviously. It's up to you what you do with your body, but I think when people reach that point where they feel like fitness is a responsibility, they tend to lean into that as hard as they can for a long time. It's something that never really goes away, I think, once you become interested in it. You feel that lapses in your fitness are detrimental to your overall mood and that kind of thing. So whilst that's easily one of the interests of mine that takes up the most time and requires the most dedication to do so, it's definitely one of the interests that is easiest to keep going, because to not keep it going is the most unpleasant, basically. Moving through fitness, I guess there's specific types of fitness that are easy to keep up than others. For me, things like running, going to the gym, they're easy, they're routine, they're regular, they're easy to keep going. However, there are things that I find maybe a bit more fun and a bit more engaging and a bit more fulfilling, like Muay Thai, which fulfills the role of having that fitness serve a purpose. So if I go running on a given day and then I do Muay Thai the next day and I feel like my cardio is better, I mean, it won't happen that quickly, but if I feel like my cardio has been improving from running, it will encourage me to do more fitness related stuff in order to improve the Muay Thai that I've been doing. Yoga and flexibility is another big one there. On the complete flip side of that is the interest of video games, which is certainly the easiest to slip into if I want to. It's quite difficult at the moment just due to the amount of time that I have. It isn't a lot after fitness and work is all put in, but I think that video games are kind of an artistic consumption that is necessary for me. It's something that I found interesting longer than any of my other interests, except for perhaps reading, and it fulfills that purpose really well of keeping me attached to creative artistic things beyond what I'm creating or doing myself, and also allows a kind of element of escapism, engagement. It can keep my mind occupied when it needs to be, that kind of thing. In terms of other interests, I mentioned reading. Reading is actually probably the interest that I found most difficult to keep up with as I've got older, simply because it was one of the things that I did when I was younger, when I don't think this is necessarily where my enjoyment came from, but it's certainly why I started doing it, is because I, first of all, found it interesting, and second of all, at some points during my childhood was not really allowed to do anything else. I had a kind of well, not allowed, but found that was one of my options. So video games weren't necessarily available in the way that I wanted them to be. I could go outside, maybe it was raining, and I'd spend pretty much the entire day just back to back reading books. And that interest has been harder to keep up simply because of time and encroachment of other interests, where if I have some time to be reading, I could be playing video games, or if I have some time to be reading, I could be filming and editing, or if I have some time to be reading, I could be exercising, which it shouldn't really be like that. So recently I've tried to develop it a bit more and bought some more books and designated specific times to be reading. Normally I find it fairly easy to read on public transport, which some people don't find easy, but certainly works for me. I'm able to engage that a bit more and have that as a time when I'm not doing anything else. And it's working so far. I'm managing to progress in a more routine way with reading, which is something that I had trouble with recently, in that I will read for a long time, for a couple of days, and then just miss it for 3 months on end or something like that. So that's one thing that I prefer to develop a bit more lately. I'm trying not to make this blog too boring. I feel like I'm just talking to the camera for ages, but I'll try and put some images of stuff that I've been doing up at the same time to try and make it more engaging. And obviously it's my first vlog, so we'll see how more interesting I can make them as time goes on. In terms of other interests, where I live encourages me to engage and explore the culture regularly. I live in Hong Kong. I don't live in my native country, so there's a constant pressure to engage with the culture here, which can be very tricky when you're working in a place, because you feel like you integrate in a way which makes things mundane at times. I walk past things every day that when I first got here I would have been really impressed and engaged by, but now they kind of seem a bit more routine. So I try to engage with that through filming and through exploring areas that I might not have been before, or engaging through film in areas that I have been before and trying to find a new aspect to them. So that's something that I've been trying to integrate, and that's actually fairly easy when I have the time for it. Unfortunately, working 6 days a week doesn't make that easy. I think that's more or less all I really wanted to talk about for this vlog. Hopefully I'll try and make the next one a bit more interesting, but this is more of an experimental exercise than anything, so hope it was relatively interesting for people who know me anyway.